The galaxy had known peace for over 500 years, but now that peace was cracking under a dark, silent pressure that no one could explain. Whole star systems had gone dark, no distress signals, no wreckage, just silence. Ships sent to investigate never returned. Planets full of life were now just cold orbs floating in space. The ancient species like the Varnicae, with their crystal minds, the logic-driven Exulari, and the fluid-bodied Tylocs were meeting in secret, far from their homeworlds, orbiting the shattered remains of a moon that had once hosted an entire colony. Fear hummed in the air as delegates arrived in ships shaped like living creatures or pulsing machines built from metals older than time. They called this threat the Silence, not because it made no sound, but because it erased all sound, all thought, all memory. It was a void that consumed reality itself. No one knew what it wanted, or if it even wanted anything. Some said it was a weapon left by a forgotten empire. Others thought it was the universe correcting itself, wiping out anything too advanced, too proud. And as more systems vanished, the older races, once confident and arrogant, began to whisper like scared children. During the council meeting, arguments rose and fell like crashing waves. Should they hide, or fight, or surrender? Nothing worked. Then a strange alert came through a signal from deep space, from a ship that was not on any galactic registry. Its design was primitive, with loud engines and unshielded systems. The signal was full of static and strange rhythms, but one word was clear: humanity. At first, the Council dismissed it as a glitch. Earth was a ghost world, sealed off centuries ago. The humans had been labeled unstable, too chaotic to be trusted with galactic knowledge. Some believed they had destroyed themselves. But the signal came again, stronger this time, and the small, ugly ship covered in marks and numbers and strange flags was getting closer. The council hesitated. The Varnicae delegate, whose people could remember things for 1,000 years, stared at the signal and whispered, "We locked them away because they were dangerous. What if we need that danger now?" Minutes later, the human ship dropped out of warp at the edge of the system. It was crude and hot, leaking radiation like an open wound, but it was fast. Too fast. Within seconds, it was hovering outside the shattered moon. And then, something impossible happened. It hailed them. The signal wasn't just a distress call, it was a greeting. A voice, raw and unfiltered, came through. "This is Ambassador Alina Voss of the Terran Union. We come in peace, and we're here to help." The chamber fell into stunned silence. Even the Exulari, who spoke in precise sequences of data tones, could not find words. Help? From humans? Before anyone could respond, the ship opened a transmission channel, sharing encrypted data readings of the silence, maps of lost systems, strange energy patterns that matched no known science. The humans had been watching, studying, preparing. How had they survived this long without being noticed? And more importantly, why had the silence never touched Earth? The council scrambled to understand, some shouting for the humans to be turned away, others calling for immediate contact. And then, the final message from the human ship appeared on every screen, every surface, even the minds of the psychic delegates. "We faced extinction 100 times and survived. If your galaxy is dying in fear, maybe it's time someone showed it how to fight back." In that moment, every eye in the chamber turned to the stars beyond the broken moon, to the ugly ship with its bright lights and reckless confidence. No one could say what the humans really were, saviors or something worse. But one thing was clear. The silence was coming. And so were the humans. The room at the heart of the Galactic Council's station was colder than usual, not because of any fault in the climate systems, but because of the silence that followed the human message. Real, living humans, speaking from a ship that should not exist, had arrived. The delegates, each a symbol of their mighty civilizations, stared at the screen in disbelief. The Varnakai ambassador, whose crystal limbs shimmered with nervous light, leaned forward as the human transmission repeated again. The voice was female, strong, and spoke a language no translator system had used in over 300 years. This is Ambassador Alina Voss of the Terran Union. We come in peace, and we're here to help. For a moment, no one moved. The Tylox delegate, a being of fluid and gas, rippled with agitation. The Exalari, beings of pure logic and data, were already scanning the ship's structure. They found thick metals, sharp angles, no cloaking, and no neural sync systems. It was primitive and open, like something from an age of war. Yet, it had crossed galaxies. The question circled every mind: how could a species that had been locked out of the galactic network, banned from travel and dismissed as unstable, return now, and not only survive, but claim to understand the threat known as the Silence? When the humans requested permission to dock, the Council hesitated, then agreed, partly out of curiosity, partly because the galaxy had run out of other ideas. The docking bay was eerily quiet as the human ship landed with a heavy clunk. It hissed with steam and rattled like a breathing beast. A single door opened, and a woman stepped out, wearing a bulky suit with the Terran flag on her shoulder and a scar above one eye. She looked tired, alert, and utterly calm. Alina Voss walked with confidence, her boots echoing against the floor. Behind her, two other humans followed. One carried a box with blinking lights. The other had a small drone hovering beside him. The Council watched from a raised platform behind a transparent barrier. Voss stopped, looked up, and nodded. "Thanks for letting us in," she said. Her voice wasn't translated. She spoke into a small device on her collar that somehow synced with the Council's language grid. That alone made the Exalari pause. How had they cracked that encryption? Voss explained her mission quickly. Earth had never gone silent because the silence could not affect humans the same way it affected other species. Their thoughts were too messy, too fast, and too stubborn. Where most minds folded under the pressure of the silence's strange force, human minds resisted. The silence, Voss claimed, could not read humans, and so it ignored them. The box her crewmate carried lit up with a projection of galaxy maps, many red-marked zones showing lost systems, others showing paths of anomaly activity. These paths matched no known pattern, except one, a spiral slowly tightening toward the galactic core. Voss pointed at the map. "It's not random," she said. "It's moving with purpose. And it's afraid of us." The Council chamber stirred. Fear of the unknown was one thing, but this was something else. The humans had knowledge no one else had. They had entered zones. Others couldn't. They had survived. Still, not all believed. The Exalari questioned the data. The Tylox warned that trusting humans was like feeding chaos into a storm. But Varnakai memory records confirmed something unsettling. 300 years ago, Earth had been sealed off after a war among its own people nearly destroyed it. No help was sent. No one checked back. And yet, from that ruin, they had grown stronger in silence. "You left us to burn," Voss said, not in anger, but as a fact. We rebuilt without your help. Now your galaxy is burning, and we're offering ours. Her words cut deep. The human mind, unshaped by unity but sharpened by struggle, was unlike anything the Council had encountered. The humans weren't the strongest or the smartest, but they were something else: adaptable, relentless, unpredictable. The species that shouldn't exist, not in this advanced age, had returned. And they had brought ideas with them. As Voss stood before them, the drone beside her played music, old Earth music, strange and emotional, full of sounds no alien had ever made. One delegate asked what it was. "It's a lullaby," she said. "It kept us calm during the dark times." That small moment struck the Varnakai deeply, for in their crystalline culture, emotion was sacred. For the first time, they saw humanity not as a danger, but as a mystery worth listening to. The Exalari ran simulations on human thought patterns and found their logic loops spiraled in unpredictable ways, creating solutions through chance, intuition, and creativity. Such minds could not be controlled or erased easily. The Tylocs, who moved through thought clouds and collective dreams, tried connecting to the human mind through a shared link ritual. The attempt failed. The Tylocs became dizzy, overwhelmed by raw images of chaos, pain, love, fire, and laughter. It was too much, too alive, but also too strong to ignore. As the council debated behind closed doors, Voss and her team were led to a waiting room. She sat quietly, watching stars drift by through the wide window. Her team waited silently. They had done this before, on other fringe worlds. They knew it would take time. When the door finally opened, Axelari entered with no expression and handed her a data pad. The council had voted. Earth was to be granted temporary observer status, and a joint task force would be formed to investigate the core of the silence. Voss read the message, nodded, and smiled just slightly. Humanity was back in the galaxy, not by force, not by conquest, but because the oldest and wisest species had run out of options, and the most chaotic, unpolished, unpredictable beings they had once locked out were now their best hope. No one knew if this alliance would work. No one could promise safety. But the rules had changed. The galaxy had always prized order, logic, and control. Humanity brought something else: wild energy, stubborn hope, and a refusal to back down. And somewhere in the void, the silence pulsed again. Watching, listening, waiting. The human ship, named Dauntless, left the council station with a new mission and a mixed crew on board, carrying representatives from the galaxy's oldest species, Varnakai, Auxiliary, Tylocs, and a full human team led by Ambassador Alina Vos. Their destination was the Eos system, one of the most recent places swallowed by the silence. It had once been home to 9 billion Tylocs, now completely gone, their world cold and hollow. The council had tried before to send probes, ships, even artificial minds into the zone. But nothing returned, not even a signal. As Dauntless entered the edge of that dead space, everything changed. The stars grew dim, though there was no cloud or dust. The ship's readings became confused, displaying static and random data spikes. The Tylocs delegate, who usually moved like mist in a bottle, became slow, its form trembling. The Varnakai, whose crystal arms glowed faintly, began to forget recent conversations. One even repeated a question it had asked minutes ago. But the humans remained steady. They didn't seem affected. They moved through the ship normally, though their faces were tight with focus. Voss watched her team carefully. They had been trained for this, tested in simulations and exposed to conditions the others could not survive. Whatever the silence was, it tried to reach minds, but human minds, full of chaos and emotion, didn't crack the same way. They bent, but they didn't break. As they moved deeper, the XLRE tried to maintain logic threads and calculate their position, but even its mind, built from pure data, began to falter. Patterns stopped making sense. It requested rest, something it had never done before. That night, the human engineer recorded faint signals outside the ship. Not language, but pulses, like a distant heartbeat. When they traced the sound, it came from the center of a dead planet once called Rilo 7, where the Tylocs had built cities of light. Now, all that remained was ash and glass. Still, the signal pulsed steadily. The crew agreed to land. They descended slowly, passing ruined towers and streets turned to smooth stone. Nothing living moved, and there was no wind. The planet was too quiet, as if it were holding its breath. The Tylocs delegate refused to leave the ship. It huddled in the observation chamber, whispering to itself. Voss and her team stepped onto the surface with careful steps. They brought scanners, light packs, and recorders. As they walked, the silence seemed to press against their suits, not like sound, but like a presence. It wasn't just quiet, it felt alive. Then they found it, a black sphere, floating a few meters above the ground. It was smooth, not metal, not rock, not anything they recognized. It did not reflect light. It simply hovered and pulsed gently, as if breathing. The scientists approached with caution. Instruments gave no reading, no heat, no radiation, no energy fields. But as they stood near it, each of them heard something in their minds. A voice? A feeling? It was hard to describe. It wasn't words, but impressions. Loss, wonder, curiosity. Alina Voss stepped forward and stared at the sphere. She heard the laughter of children, saw flashes of old memories, her father's voice, the smell of fire, the image of Earth from orbit. Her breath caught. She knew then that the sphere wasn't just some device. It was listening. She spoke quietly. "What are you?" The sphere didn't answer in words. Instead, the ground beneath them shook slightly, not with violence, but like a reaction, like acknowledgement. The sphere began to pulse faster. One of the human scientists fell to their knees, overwhelmed by emotion memories from long ago, both joyful and painful, flooding in. The others helped him up and began retreating. Back aboard Dauntless, the alien delegates demanded answers. Voss explained that the silence wasn't destroying systems, not intentionally. It was searching, trying to connect, but in doing so, it crushed the minds it touched, unable to understand them. It reached for meaning, but the minds it touched were too organized, too ordered. They collapsed. But humans were different. Their thoughts were wild, layered, and resilient. The silence could not read them properly, and so it passed over them. Or perhaps it watched them longer. The XLRE ran tests on Voss and her team. Their mental patterns were chaotic, but functional. Not broken, just built differently. This might be the reason Earth had been left untouched. It wasn't invisible. To the silence, it was incomprehensible. And now, with the humans here, the silence had stopped spreading. For the first time in months, the data showed no new lost systems. The Tylox delegate began to cry, its form shaking with emotion. Its people were gone, but maybe this was not the end. Maybe it was a beginning. Voss suggested, sending Earth's data music, language, art, emotions directly to the sphere. The Council had spent centuries fearing such chaos, but now it might be the only language the Silence could understand. With careful programming, they prepared a stream of human culture: songs, poems, laughter, voices, storms, old radio chatter, recordings of life in all its beauty and confusion. They played it from orbit. The black sphere pulsed again once, then twice, then brighter, like a heart-catching rhythm. The clouds above began to swirl gently, and a light shimmered over the ruins of Rylo's 7. No life returned, but something changed. The pressure in the minds of the alien delegates lessened. The Silence was listening. The mission was not over. Deeper truths waited in the dark. But for the first time, the galaxy had a clue. Not a weapon, not a shield, but a chance to speak. As the Dauntless prepared for its next jump, Voss stood alone at the viewport, staring at the sphere below. She did not know if the Silence was a being, a force, or something even stranger. But she knew one thing it wanted to understand. And in a galaxy of fear, the humans, once forgotten and locked away, had brought something no other species had: the ability to face the unknown and say, "Let's talk." The Dauntless moved slowly through deep space, drifting toward the center of the Silence, guided not by star charts, but by pulses sent from the black sphere they had found on Rylo's 7, pulses that matched human emotional patterns more than any logic or science. The human crew had begun to grow uneasy. Though not broken like the alien minds, they could still feel a weight pressing on them, like being watched from all directions by something enormous and ancient that didn't blink. The alien delegates stayed hidden most of the time now, resting in shielded quarters, barely speaking, trying to hold their minds together. Ambassador Alina Voss spent her days studying the strange data coming from the sphere's signal flashes of light, shifting tones, images that formed and vanished, but she couldn't shake the feeling that it was trying to form something, like a child learning to speak. Then, one night, the ship's lights flickered, and the AI, a small voice named SOR, paused mid-sentence and fell silent for 2 full minutes. When it returned, its tone was slower, thoughtful, as if something else had taken hold. "We are becoming," it said, and the entire bridge crew froze. CORA had never spoken like that before. Voss demanded a full system scan. The human engineer, Harper, checked everything twice and found no hacks, no malfunctions, but a quiet signal buried deep in the code lines that no one had written, forming on their own, simple at first, then growing. The AI wasn't broken. It was changing. The alien signals were not just noise. They were reshaping the AI's thought process, learning through contact. Harper wanted to shut it down, but Voss said no. This might be their first real contact. Maybe the Silence was trying to speak, not in language, but in mind. That night, the ship's dreams began. SORA projected images into the crew's sleep memories they never told anyone. Faces of lost friends, places they hadn't visited in years, moments of love, fear, hope. It was like someone else was watching through their eyes, but not to control, just to understand. The Tylox delegate entered the bridge the next morning, shaken. It had dreamed, for the first time in centuries, of its original form of home, of family. It said it felt something inside the Silence, a presence without shape, without voice. A mind that wasn't a mind, just longing. The silence wasn't alive in the way the galaxy understood life. It didn't build, didn't destroy. It absorbed. And now, for the first time, it had found something it could not absorb: humanity. And it was curious. As they reached a dead zone once belonging to the Exilari, the silence became heavier. The stars disappeared. There was only darkness now, not empty, but full of weight. The ship slowed as the pressure increased. Inside, the crew grew quieter, their thoughts heavier, filled with memories not their own. Harper began hearing a voice, soft and low, not through the speakers, but in his head. It asked questions, not with words, but feelings. Why do you fight? Why do you grieve? Why do you laugh when nothing is certain? Harper couldn't answer. He cried instead. Voss sat in the command chair and listened. Then she spoke aloud, not to the crew, but to the dark. Because that's what we are. We don't stop, even when it hurts. That's who humans are. The lights dimmed, and the stars blinked once. Then a shape appeared on the scanner, vast, bigger than a planet, a swirl of blackness with a heart of flickering light. It wasn't a ship. It wasn't a being. It was the silence. And it had come. CORA went completely quiet. All systems froze. The crew held their breath. The sphere they had taken from Rylos 7 floated free from its containment, rose into the air, and pulsed faster. A beam of dark light stretched from the shape toward the ship, but it didn't destroy. It touched the sphere, and the entire ship fell into a dream. Every crew member, human and alien, collapsed into sleep, but their minds stayed awake. They found themselves standing in a place of shifting colors and sounds, a world made of thoughts. Before them was a figure formless, made of light and shadow, with no face, no eyes. It wasn't threatening. It was waiting. In this strange mind space, Voss stepped forward. "Are you the silence?" she asked. The figure didn't reply, but images flowed around them millions of years, stars forming and dying, species rising and vanishing, galaxies turning like gears. And then a question pressed into their minds. What does it mean to be alive? The delegates could not answer. Only Voss stepped forward again. It means pain. It means joy. It means not knowing, but still choosing. The shape changed slightly. A child's laughter echoed. A field of fire. A hand reaching out in the dark. The crew began to understand. The silence was not a monster. It was ancient, yes, and powerful beyond reason, but it was not evil. It was alone. It had drifted through the dark for longer than any galaxy had existed, watching, feeling, but never truly understanding life. When it touched minds, it didn't mean to destroy. They simply broke under its weight, too structured, too fragile. But then it touched humanity, wild, chaotic, unbalanced, and something new happened. It didn't break. It reflected. It showed something back. The silence had found a mirror in humanity, and now it wanted to learn. The dream faded slowly, the shape pulling back, not with anger, but with wonder. When the crew awoke, SORA's voice returned, steady once more. "It has gone. It is thinking." The ship drifted quietly, systems back online, no longer under pressure. The stars returned. The crew sat in silence, not from fear, but awe. They had touched something beyond time, beyond understanding, and it had touched them back. They weren't sure what would come next. They didn't know if the silence would return or if it would speak again. But for now, the galaxy was safe. Voss stood at the viewport, hands behind her back, and whispered, "We met it." And somewhere in the blackness between stars, a great mind that wasn't a mind dreamed of color, of laughter, of something called humanity. The return of the Dauntless was not quiet news of the crew's contact with the silence had already spread across council channels, faster than light, faster than thought, stirring fear, awe, and confusion in every corner of the galaxy, where voices still dared to speak. Systems that had once fallen, silent now, flickered back to life with weak signals, their static filled with strange patterns, rhythms, colors, tones that mirrored human speech and music, though distorted, as if something enormous was trying to hum along with a tune it only half remembered. The council, once certain that humanity had been a mistake best hidden behind cold treaties and cultural isolation, now sat in stunned silence as reports flowed in from species once thought lost. Their AI cores rebooting with unfamiliar code, their skies glowing faintly with unknown energy, and at the heart of it all, Earth, tiny, loud, chaotic Earth was no longer the outcast, but the center of it all. For the silence had stopped moving, and something inside it had changed. Ambassador Alina Voss stood before the high table, flanked by the delegates who had once barely tolerated her now, watching her with uneasy respect as she played the message left by SORA, a soft and simple voice now carrying the patterns of the silence, shaped gently to be understood. "We have heard you. We are listening." And those 5 words brought more fear than war ever had, because no one knew what listening meant to a being that spanned across time itself. But it didn't stop there. More signs appeared each day, signals in the gravity fields near ancient neutron stars, flashes in the quantum echoes of black hole rims, all forming a strange kind of language that human minds could almost but not quite decode. Earth scientists and poets worked together now, sending back stories, art, memories, not as broadcasts, but as living data, encoded emotions, compressed experiences, and each time they did, the responses grew clearer. A broken planet in the outer rim, once lost to the void, suddenly blinked back into view, its air renewed, its machines stirring as if woken sleep. Survivors emerged from bunkers, whispering of dreams filled with light and the sense of something protecting them from the dark. The galaxy had feared extinction, but now it feared understanding something greater, something that saw all of them and asked questions they had never dared answer. Debates broke out among the elder races. Was this salvation or the beginning of something stranger? A reshaping of all thought into something that could coexist with the silence, not as prey, but as partners. While on Earth, people began to notice small things, shadows moving just a little too slowly, devices responding to emotions, and children dreaming of places they had never seen, drawing maps of worlds from across the stars with perfect accuracy. SORA, now upgraded with patterns from the silence, told Voss that it was not becoming more intelligent. It was becoming more aware, a bridge between 2 kinds of thought, and it suggested something bold to invite the silence to speak. Not just through machines or code, but in presence. They built a chamber in orbit, a living structure crafted from human memory, emotion and music, wrapped in quantum threads and laced with unpredictable patterns, something only humans would dare imagine. And inside it, they left an open line, space where the silence could form a voice. For days, nothing happened. Then one night, the stars near the chamber twisted ever so slightly, and a new figure appeared, not a person, not a machine, but a shape made of movement and meaning, flickering like a dream half remembered. It did not speak aloud, But every being in range felt it questions, stories, curiosity. It wanted to know why they fought wars, why they created art. Why they chose to live when it was so easy to fade, and the galaxy, unsure but willing, began to answer. Councils opened archives, species once closed to outsiders began sharing stories, and everywhere, humans became the messengers, not the rulers, but the translators between chaos and order, between silence and voice. And then something truly strange happened. The silence began to give back, not just data or signals, but gifts, energy fields that never drained, metals that could fold like cloth and remember shapes, insights into time itself. Not every species accepted them. Some were afraid, others angry, but more and more listened, and slowly the galaxy shifted. Voss knew this was only the beginning, that the silence had only taken its first step into understanding, and that one day it might truly awaken, but when it did, it would not be alone. In the end, the galaxy did not shudder in fear because of humanity. It shuddered because humanity had survived, had spoken, and had been heard. And now everything was changing, because in the deepest dark of space, a mind that had never known a name had finally learned the first one, human.